I had the chance just last week to attend the grand opening of the Mont Blanc House, the Mont Blanc Museum in Hamburg. And I got to meet the creators of these pens. And I got to learn about the manifestation and the story behind this spider metamorphosis masterpiece. And one of the inspirations of this pen was Ovid, the famed ancient Roman author who wrote Metamorphoses. And book 6 of Metamorphoses is about Arachne, who was the greatest weaver of the loom in all of ancient Rome. She was so good at her art that she, slight mistake, boasted about it to the gods. And Pallas Minerva was not too excited about this boasting of Arachne, about her skilled loomsmanship. The two of them agreed to a competition, and Minerva, the goddess, created something so exquisitely beautiful on her loom, but Arachne's was even more beautiful. The mortal was truly the best in all the realm, both humans and deities, at creating masterful artwork on the loom. And the coolest part of the story, in my opinion, is what she depicted, what she wove on that loom was a series of stories about all the sins that the deities committed against humans, which also happen to be depicted in the other stories of Ovid's Metamorphosis. It was just such a masterpiece of not only brilliance and skill and mastery in her craft, but in, insulting the deities in the very act of the creation of the craft, which I thought was just so interesting. And so, if I may read to you just a few lines from book 6 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. Neither Pallas nor envy itself could fault that work. The golden-haired warrior goddess was grieved by its success and tore the tapestry, embroidered with the gods' crimes. And as she held her shuttle made of boxwood from Mount Citoris, she struck Idomenian Arachne 3 or 4 times on the forehead. The unfortunate girl could not bear it, and courageously slipped a noose around her neck. Pallas, in pity, lifted her as she hung there and said these words, "Live on, then, and yet hang, condemned one. But, lest you are careless in the future, this same condition is declared in punishment against your descendants to the last generation." Departing after saying this, the goddess sprinkled her with the juice of Hecate's herb, and immediately at the touch of this dark poison, Arachne's hair fell out. With it went her nose and ears. Her head shrank to the smallest size, and her whole body became tiny. Her slender fingers struck to her sides as legs. The rest is belly, from which she still spins a thread, and as a spider weaves her ancient web. It's such a cool story. The story of Arachne has been recreated all throughout history, even recently in a Broadway show featuring the music of Bono and The Edge. Something happened to me in the early days of my own entrepreneurial story, in the early days of Roundtable Group, that reminds me of this story. I, too, accidentally took on and boasted to the gods. It was in the 1997 to 2000 era. I had just been admitted, not sure how, but they took me as a graduate student at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. And 1997 was all about the dot-com era. Do you remember it? It was crazy dot-com startup fever. And none of my classmates, none of my professors, when I described to them roundtable groups, little expert witness company, nobody said to me anymore, "Some pig." My idea was boring compared to all the venture-funded startups. And so all I could think about in business school was, we should have something .com-y. And the best we could come up with was, why not? How about a .com advisory firm featuring the leading professors of the day? And so I took on the task of finding a number of professors who were becoming famous in the realm of .com startups. And two in particular I picked as sort of leaders of this new venture dedicated to advising promising .com startups. And we were to be compensated via equity, which was the currency of the era. And I introduced these two professors, one from each of my alma maters, Northwestern and the University of Chicago. And all the gory details of this experience are articulated in my forthcoming book called The Scholar's Treasure. And what happened was, after many hundreds of hours of work conceptualizing the idea and finding these two experts and connecting them to each other and setting up the whole infrastructure of this .com startup advisory firm, what happened was these two deities didn't really need the mere mortal anymore. It's the biggest risk in being in my brokerage of experts business. It's called disintermediation. And, after a while, once the talent is connected together, they don't really feel the need for the broker anymore. The talent calls the shots, they told me. And I felt so betrayed and so humiliated. And so, as Arachne told her tale in the context of weaving a web on her loom, I tell you my whole tale of epic startup betrayal and humiliation. But you know what, dear friends? I have forgiven. And I have actually come to deeply appreciate what happened to me, because from that very moment, I learned self-confidence. And it is a switch. I first got self-confidence my freshman year at Northwestern. I knew nothing. I was a terrible student in high school. I barely got into Northwestern. And I took this philosophy class. It was a hard one. Modern philosophy taught by Michael Williams. And I loved it. I loved it. I got it. I got it deeply. We were studying Descartes and David Hume and the empiricists. And I got it. I got it at such a deep level. I loved every minute of that class. I read every story of philosophy cover to cover, and I got an A+ on my midterm and my final. First time ever. From that moment, I had academic self-confidence. And when this thing happened to me in 1999, I developed entrepreneurial self-confidence and never again found myself in a position like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are some stories from my life that relate to the magnificent Mont Blanc Spider Metamorphosis 88 and the Mont Blanc Year of the Pig 512, paired with a signed copy of Charlotte's Web and an original illustration by Garth Williams. Thank you for surviving this video of my first ever attempt to curate a collection of pens and books. Welcome again to the Scholar's Treasure and to the Literary Arts Society.